I'm Dawn Kirkham from the International College of Energy Healing, and welcome to my channel. In today's video, I thought I'd talk about my journey into mediumship, what helped me to develop, and what I think are the most important things for a developing medium to do. My aim is to inspire, empower, and support you if you're starting out as a medium. And stay until the end of the video, as I will be talking about the different types of mediumship and how it all works. So how did it all start for you, you might ask? Well, I don't remember being able to communicate with spirit from a young age. However, after talking to my siblings, I think there was something going on with spirit that I probably long ago blocked out. I also grew up in a family of Catholics, and it really wasn't something talked about or entertained at all. So it didn't really feature much in my growing life. My husband always laughs, and he says that when he met me, I was normal. Whatever normal is, I suppose. And he's right. I know I didn't have any spirit connection or communication. I was just busy building my life, working and playing hard. But spirit had other ideas. Now, lots of people ask how I came to be a medium, and I always say I was awoken by spirit. So physically awoken out of sleep, and psychically and spiritually awoken. So let me share what happened to me. Well, it was a normal night, and I was lying in bed all warm and comfortable. So kind of in between being awake and asleep, I guess. Not a care in the world. I loved my home. It was a 16th century cottage in a rural farming area called Bickerstaff in the northwest of England. It was stone built and had the most glorious wooden beams holding up the rafters. It was a house built to last. In the middle of fields with not too many neighbours, splendid isolation. All I could see from my windows was fields and the odd farmhouse in the distance. It was bliss. I was told once that it used to be kind of a coaching house on the road to Ormskirk, which is a little market town about 10 miles away. I don't know if that was true or not, but we did used to get lots of stories told to us about the cottage, and lots of past occupants would come and say hi. We had the loveliest of ladies come, an aunt and her niece, and the aunt was actually born in the cottage, and she was in her 90s when she came in to see the place, and she told us so many wonderful stories about what was life was like when she grew up there almost a century ago. It was a priceless moment, and one that I think about often. So as the cottage is surrounded by fields, it is dark on a night, no street lights, so it was pitch black in my bedroom. I used to be so afraid of the dark, so much so that when I was a small child, I would pray that my mum and dad would literally hire somebody and pay them to sit by my bed and watch me sleep. I only realised now that I was so afraid of the dark because probably spirits were visiting me at night. The great thing about the cottage was I felt safe and secure in the darkness of my room. Now this night my husband was downstairs, he was watching a movie or something, and I was tired and went to bed early. Lying in my bed, I heard a terrible noise close to my ear, and one that I can only describe as when you put two wires together, two kind of electric wires, and you hear that crackling and zapping sound. It was absolutely terrifying, and it jolted me out of my relaxed state. So eyes wide open and heart pounding and trying to make sense of what happened. And it felt like there was a pair of lips that had brushed my ear. It was really creepy. So I was staring wildly around to see if there was somebody in the room, and then my bed started to shake. At first it was like a low rumble, like somebody had bumped into it, but it didn't stop, and it carried on shaking until it was actually moving from side to side and jostling me around from side to side also. And at that point I'd had enough, and I jumped out of bed and flew downstairs to my husband. I kind of burst into the living room where John was watching the TV. Now my husband, he's one of the kindest men that I've ever met, and he's a loving husband and father, and I am so very blessed to be married to him. Now born in Liverpool just like me, he's down to earth, he's practical and no nonsense. So once he got over the shock of me hurtling in, he listened to my tale and concluded that it must have been a dream. He made me a cup of tea while I calmed down, trying to find a rationale for everything that happened. It was very reassuring. Perhaps it had all been a dream. So waking in the morning, I remembered what had happened in the night. Was it a dream? Did I imagine it? I must have, right? So I got on with my week and forgot about what happened, settling back into the normality of family life. And I remember I was starting to get excited for a private reading with a local psychic that I was scheduled to have. I'd read one of his books maybe about 6 months before, and I'd wanted to have a reading with him. I remember at the time I was disappointed to see on his website that there was about a 6-month wait to see him, but I booked it anyway, put it out of my mind until it was closer, and this was the week. So when the day arrived, I was pretty stoked. I was finally getting to see him for my hour reading. So I reminded John that I was going out, and he was a little bit wary. We'd not done anything like that before, and he didn't like the idea of me going to see somebody that, we didn't know. So he agreed to drive me and wait outside. So we were all set. We pulled into this driveway, and this big, lovely old house appeared. It had a huge wooden door, and each side of it were large windows, one of which was streaming light in so you could see right inside. And it was a large room with a huge wooden dining table along the middle that could probably seat about 8-10 people either side. It was that large. At the end of the table was a man that I recognised from the book cover, sitting quietly with his eyes closed in meditation. And in a moment of weakness, I turned to my husband and asked him to come in with me. I don't know why. Maybe I was a little bit nervous. I'd never really done anything like this before, or maybe I was being guided. Whatever the reason, John agreed, and we rang the doorbell. Upon entering the house, we were shown to the large dining room to be greeted by the medium, who I am embarrassed to say that I cannot remember his name. It was 20-some, almost 30 years ago now. So my husband was there to take notes, and he was ready with his pen and his paper, and the reading started, and the medium paced back and forth, seemingly talking to people behind him that we couldn't see. And he shared a few things that the spirits were saying to him, but nothing much rang a bell to me. I was starting to feel a little discouraged when he said, "Your dad is here," and I perked up because it was my dad that I was hoping to connect with. But it turned out it wasn't my dad, but it was John's dad. Disappointing or what? And he went on to give John some truly amazing validations that his dad, Jack, was present and talking to us. Now, not very often do you get a medium who can share specifics like first and last names, street names, and numbers of houses. He really was very accurate, and John was impressed. So whilst I was delighted for John, I couldn't help feeling a little miffed that my session had been hijacked by him, and I became more despondent as we got closer to the hour. So just at the end of our scheduled time, the medium turned to me and he asked what had happened in the bedroom that week. And to be honest, I'd quite forgotten, and I kind of looked puzzled. So he asked it again, insisting that he was being told that I had been frightened in the bedroom in the middle of the night. Well, of course, it all came flooding back, and I told him my sorry tale. So laughing, he informed me that I had been awakened by spirit, and now it was the time for me to work with them and develop my abilities. Well, you could have knocked me down with a feather. Me being able to communicate with spirits? Yeah, right. But it turns out that I'd been deaf to spirit for quite some time. In fact, from the time that I turned my abilities down to perceive them when I was a child. I guess it was survival and not wanting to be afraid anymore. So they left me alone for a while, but apparently I was so good at ignoring them when they were having a hard time getting through to me. So they decided that they were going to do something dramatic to get my attention, and dramatic was right. So now I say that I was truly awakened by spirit, both physically and spiritually. So I sat with a medium for long after our allotted time, and he talked me through what was happening and how it might unfold for me. He was very kind and extremely generous, and I'll always be grateful to him. So since then, I've been on this wonderful journey with spirit, during which they have delighted me, humbled me, inspired me, pushed, cajoled, protected, and most importantly, loved me. Now, finding experienced mentors has been such an important part of my journey. I've sat in open and closed circles, learned how to explore my mediumship safely, and I've been stretched in terms of what I thought I felt comfortable with. Now, this is one reason why I started this channel, to find a way to connect with and reach out to more people than I could ever physically do. I hope that you'll see me as your virtual mentor and coach. Now, I first sat in circle at a local spiritualist church, and I did that for about a year before I was invited to sit in a couple of closed circles. Now, I have a lot to say about circles and we'll be shooting a separate video on that. But for now, have a look around in your local area and see if there's anything happening. Connect with the person leading it and ask some questions about their experience, what the focus of the circle is, etc. And if you feel it resonates, join up. As I say, there is a lot more about this that I will share in a future video, so stay tuned on that. The other thing that you might start to notice is that people will come into your life that will help you progress. I have had so many stories of people showing up randomly and suggesting a book or a video or a person to talk to. Your desire for support will literally bring them to you, just like a magnet. So pay attention to these things happening. If you hear about something a couple of times in a short space of time, listen to it and act. Now, meditation was critical in my development. I know it sounds boring, but it is an essential part of any psychic or mediumship work. Oh, and it's good for your mind, body and soul as well. When I first sat in circle, I would sit in silence, meditating for at least 30 minutes. For the longest of times, it wasn't meditating for me. It was an excruciatingly long period of time that I found myself sitting on a hard chair and my bum going numb, wrestling with my thoughts and getting nothing. Finally, I did have a breakthrough, and I was able to connect with an amazing young man so clearly I thought I was making it all up. Now, it was a normal circle night and I'd quietened my mind as usual, settling into the space and letting go of thought as best I could. Almost immediately I was joined by a young man. I could see him as clear as day and I could feel his energy so close to me. I could see him in my mind's eye, so I thought I was imagining things. I opened up my eyes and looked around. Everybody was meditating quietly, so I closed my eyes back up again and he was back, grinning at me. It was very weird to see him there in my mind, and not only to see him, but to feel his presence. I felt somehow more masculine, and I felt like my face was broader and longer. It really was a peculiar feeling, and I kept having to touch my face to make sure that it was still me. I didn't hear him speak, but he was definitely there, and every time I closed my eyes, he appeared. Medium build, short hair and a twinkle in his eye. I asked if he was spirit and he laughed. Now, I didn't hear any sound, but he threw his head back and he laughed. So what was strange about all of this was that I heard no sound, yet I knew things about him. So when I asked a question, I knew the answer, but I didn't know how. So my spirit visitor told me that his name was Steve and he looked like he was in his mid to late 20s. He had a gold signet ring on his right hand, jeans, trainers and a white shirt. He then proceeded to show me a black BMW car, first in pristine condition and then all smashed up, and I concluded that he died in a car accident. And he looked sad when he showed me that. I then saw the Anglican Cathedral in Liverpool, which was the town that I was born and grew up in. There were so many people crammed into it. It was standing room only. And I realised he was showing me his funeral. He felt proud that so many people came, and he pointed out his mum sitting on the front pew and a chap next to him who I recognised as the man who was actually sitting opposite me in this circle. I'm getting all goosebumps as I think about that. So I was shocked and I opened my eyes again, and it was true. He was there, deep in meditation and not knowing what was happening to me and who I had connected to. I closed my eyes again and Steve was there. I saw the contours of his face clearly, the dimples in both cheeks when he smiled, and the way that he put his hand up to his mouth as a kind of an affection. I felt I knew him so well, and it turned out that Steve was somebody with a bit of a reputation for getting into mischief, and he was well known in the area he lived in, with the local constabulary. He lived his life in the fast lane, and I'm sure he took risks. Maybe it was just youthful exuberance or some sort of predisposition, but he was somebody who liked to live on the edge. Steve loved cars, and particularly loved his black BMW. He would go out in an evening and just drive around, often not getting home until the early hours in the morning. Now, it was on such a night that ended his life. Driving at high speed down a country lane, he lost control on a bend, and that was that. He felt no pain, and he wanted his people to know that, especially his mum. He also wanted them to know that he didn't mean to do it, as there'd been some doubt as to whether it was suicide or not. But it wasn't. It was youth, high spirits and fast cars. I cannot begin to tell you what an amazing experience it was to have had such a strong and visceral connection with this young man. At the end of the meditation, I still felt his energy powerfully, and I didn't really want to come back to the room. It felt like Steve was standing kind of inside me, inside my energy field, inside my body. The connection was so strong that the lines between who I was and who he was blurred. My face still felt like it didn't belong to me, and I had an urge to hold my hand up to my mouth like he had done. It was hard to focus on the room and the group, and I asked Steve to step back a little so that I could refocus, which he did, and I felt his energy lessen. The sharing started, and I was excited at last to have something to talk about, but it was taking an age getting through everybody, and I wanted to be sure I could remember every bit of detail to honour the message and the connection. Finally, it was my turn, and I described the spirit and gave his name. Nobody spoke. Nobody claimed him. I continued on describing him, hoping that it would spark a recognition in somebody. I described him, his mannerisms, his clothes, his car, and how he died. I was starting to lose courage, stammer, go red. My heart was thumping in my chest. I was looking right at the guy I had seen in the cathedral. Surely he would twig. And eventually he did, and he spoke, and he said he thought it might be his friend who'd been killed a few years before. The relief I felt was incredible. Relief not just for me not being left kind of hanging, but for Steve, this wonderful spirit who'd shared so much with me. Everything I was given by him was accurate. There were no grey areas, no pieces of information that didn't fit. His personality was as I described, the way he died, and the question marks about his death and the lack of skid marks at the scene, which made it look like he hadn't tried to break. His funeral was indeed in Liverpool Cathedral, and it was standing room only. At the end of the process, I sat back in my chair. I felt exhilarated and exhausted. We moved on to the next person who'd had something to share, but I couldn't listen, still caught up in the energy of Steve and our experience. At the end of the circle gathering, I stayed for tea and biscuits and listened to Steve's friend share some memories of him. He was blown away by the messages that I was able to provide, as was I. It was such a blessing to be the conduit of this amazing communication, and I left feeling so humbled from the experience. And for the first time, I felt a bit surer about myself and encouraged to stay on the path. I also learned a valuable lesson that night. I learned that spirits can follow you home. Steve travelled home with me in the car. He was sitting in the passenger seat. He was having so much fun, savouring every minute of being in a car again. He was watching the traffic, seeing the sights, and when I pulled into my driveway and parked up, I turned to him and told him that I was home now and he had to leave. He smiled and then he disappeared, and I never saw him again. So thank you, Steve, for showing me that this work is beautiful, awe-inspiring, joyful and fulfilling. And thank you for leaving, as I'm not sure what I would have done at that point if he'd refused to go. So practicing activities designed to use your psychic muscles is also key. Like my videos, many of these are designed to do this. There are also books, blogs and other videos out there for you to use as inspiration. Maybe even find a like-minded friend to practice with. It's always fun to work with another person. The key is you have to build up your muscles. You're unlikely to be able to run a marathon without regular practice, and psychic development is no different. When you're working psychically or with spirit, practice safely, and by safely I mean psychic protection. I won't go into the ins and outs of it again, as I do have a video already on the topic which I'll link below, so check it out and find a few ways in which you can practice protection on a daily basis, and specifically when you're working psychically or mediumistically. I would also suggest keeping a development journal and writing down your journey, your thoughts, your experiences. It really is helpful to see how far you've come, what's worked and the exercises, etc. Now, there are many ways that you can express your gifts. I say to my students, it doesn't have to look any one way. One of the reasons the Spiritualist Church didn't jive for me is their focus on platform mediumship. So that's a medium standing in the front of the room, bringing you through somebody's deceased loved one. I realised early on that this isn't the work that I wanted to do. But I found my groove after sitting in circle with a group that did home visits. We were the group you called to do a spirit clearing, and I found this work fascinating and rewarding, and it kick-started my career as a paranormal investigator. The things that I've experienced over the years of doing this work have defined me as a medium and allowed me to develop and grow quickly, and I think more strongly. I have so many stories that I will be saving for another video. My exploits with spirits have been quite a wild ride. Now, I promised I'd talk about the different types of mediums. So apart from the ways in which we receive psychic information being different, there are other differences as well. So when I talk about psychic information, I mean whether you're somebody who sees the information, feels it, hears it, etc. And I've talked about those in previous videos, so I won't go into them now. But have you ever heard of a mental medium and a physical medium? Well, they're very different in how they work with spirit. For a mental medium, the spirit communication is largely internal to the medium. They have the job of conveying this to the person who's really unaware of the link or conversation that's happening. And that's me. I'm a mental medium. When I receive spirit communication, I see images, videos in my mind's eye. I very rarely see something with my physical eyes, but I have on a few occasions. I also experience emotions and physical feelings, and again this happens within me without anybody else knowing about it. Now, a physical medium experiences spirit communication externally, and not only the medium will see and experience it themselves, but everybody around them will as well. My near and dear sister Matilda is a physical medium. Chairs will move, pop cans will fly, and we'll hear voices in the ether when we're together. She is also able to capture the most intriguing spirit pictures. So I think I rambled on enough, and I'd love to hear about your journey into mediumship and what has influenced you, as well as your top tips. Leave your comments below, and if you like content like this, do consider subscribing to the channel. Hit the bell so that you get notified when I upload a new video, which I try to do on a Monday. So stay tuned for more exploits as a paranormal investigator, psychic and medium. So ta-ta for now.